All right, we're live, and I gotta adjust the sound. This music is always different. There you go.
Hey,
We're live. Welcome to Table Talk, everyone, where we talk all things tabletop. I'm your host, The Bad Luck Gamer, with my co-host Glue Boy.
hello, hello.
And today, we've been having a era of a lot. I've been so busy when it comes to tabletop content, mostly just due to the sheer number of releases Paizo has coming out. I mean, for the love of all that's holy, please give me a break, Paizo. There's still so much I've yet to do, and we're now getting other tabletop games talked about. The Cosmere RPG blew up, and we're going to talk about that today, obviously, by the title of today's stream. But
I'm very excited for.
I'm very excited for it too. But before we get to that, as always, we're gonna have a little bit of small talk as people kind of hop into the chat. So if you're watching this post the fact, jump to like the 25-minute mark is when we usually try to do so. So yeah, Alex, what's been going on? How you been doing?
Well, been busy since I've just been kind of running around with working, also getting my house filled up with a new roommate, and also finally back in content creation. I'm back in the pit, slaving away.
I feel that.
And funny enough, the video that is being currently constructed mid-editing will probably be out in like, I don't know, a good few days or so. Projection to finish probably Sunday or something, who knows, is on the Stormlight archive. I'm going to be making a setting overview for the world of Roshar. And the only holdup is that the first take I did wasn't very good. I don't know what happened. My performance was bad, so I had to redo it.
I hate when that happens, but it happens, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just like stumbling over every sentence, and I'm like, what's happening? And then I pop off for the second one, and I'm like, this is significantly funnier.
Sometimes
so
you just need a trial run on a video.
Yeah,
which
I
sucks.
needed to know. It sucks. It makes sense because sometimes, to be honest, I coast through like 40k or Vampire because like I just know it so well. And then like Stormlight, I'm reading currently. Like I'm on book 3. I'm like halfway through it. I'm halfway through, and like I know in the next like, I don't know, 5-6 hours, shit's gonna get bad for these characters I care about. Speaking of, the guy behind you, I'm worried for him.
Yeah.
That's Adolin Colin. I like him a lot. He's very fun. I immediately saw the blue shard plate, and I'm like, what's up, Adolin?
Yeah. Yeah, I need to start. I got a year to get my Cosmere lore in order, because that's when the Kickstarter is going to drop.
At least Stormlight. Cosmere lore is a lot bigger, because, you know, there's so many books that are connected. Though I have been learning about the universal Cosmere lore, like, as of late, because I found out, like, that it's not spoilery. Like, it's delved and touched in, but it's not like, I'm not going to ruin Stormlight for myself by learning about how the universe works, which I was really happy about. And I gotta say, it's very, very fascinating. I'm super curious for when the World Hopper stuff drops. Because, how everything kind of fits together, since every single world operates under the same rules, just interacting differently. Because every single world is crafted from the shards of a dead god. The personalities of dead gods. And so the magic is just, the perspective of it is just different. Which is just super cool. And then a lot of the other aspects of it just change around, and then it also goes into like the ideas of like the Platonian ideals of like there's an idea of truth. It's crazy. It's so cool and like detailed.
Had to adjust the text size, so hopefully that'll work a little bit better.
That's fair.
That looks a lot better, yeah. Cool. Cosmere stuff is like the one universe of Stephen King I'm not that interested in. Cosmere is not Stephen King.
Oh no, that's you're thinking of Dark Tower, I think. Dark Tower is, I mean, cool, because Dark Tower, all of Stephen King stuff, that's the entry point, the connecting dot of all of Stephen King's work. Cosmere is different. Though it sounds like you're talking about The Way of Kings, which I mean, fair enough. If it ain't your speed, I can at least understand if you start with the first book and think Shallan is annoying. I very much disagree. The second book, I firmly disagree. Because I was like, some of her jokes don't land in book 1, and then book 2, I'm like, oh yeah, no, she's immediately hopped up in my like enjoyment of her character in book 2. But I will say, a genuine possible like bump off point for a lot of people that I understand is book 1 is 1,000-page prologue to a series, and I understand if that is a like thing to bump you away. That is something the author himself is aware of. He's like, these books are long as fuck, take breaks.
Sorry, I'm trying to adjust the text boxes to be back to the way they were before. This is a problem with adding new themes to any of the scenes. It fucks everything up on the Streamlabs.
Yeah, the good old superhero stuff we had going on.
Yeah, which was fun, comic book style, but like not necessarily necessary for this one.
No, we don't need the comic book text for this.
And now the YouTube comments are not showing through. That's fun. There we go. All right. Less interested in lore, more interested in mechanics, which is the complete opposite of how I usually am. Well, and that's the thing, and that's again, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. There's a lot to actually talk about when it comes to the Cosmere RPG, because I do think genuinely, mechanically and narratively speaking, it's going to open up some new doors for tabletop in general. But beyond that, I've been doing good. I started going to the gym. I've started dieting.
Hell yeah.
Just working to get healthier and hopefully be more fit so that I can take care of my new daughter when she comes and not like hurt myself or be in bad shape myself. So just a lot of like personal growth stuff, and then on top of that, balancing. I have 3 Pathfinder books that I have to like make videos for currently, and on top of that, get back to Lancer, which Lancer's dropped some new stuff, and then I want to talk about Fabula Ultimate again because I think that game's really great, and then the Cosmere, which is a whole nother thing. So it's just busy, but the channel's been doing really well lately. We're well on our way to 10K by the end of the year, and I'm glad to see the channel's doing great. Hopefully we can do bigger and better things. I think next year we're gonna have a lot more interesting stuff. I mean, I also had to learn Mutants and Masterminds this week as well, which that's a whole nother can of worms.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be interesting. I think it's going to be a system that we're all going to be like, we all see the problems, but I feel like it's going to be a campaign we still have fun with. But I think we're all very proficient enough with tabletop and just the games in general to look at it and like as we're playing it be like, yeah, we see the issues. Like in character creation, we're immediately seeing some of the problems of just like Jesus Christ, this is a lot. But in looking at a lot of the other superhero games, as I was like just finding stuff in out and about in like other game stores, every other one I looked at was like a little lame. And Mutants and Masterminds was like the coolest one. It's like the only one that hits the feeling of like I wanna make a superhero. And then every other one was like, well, you wanna play like Captain America? Like just the Steve Rogers? Right. No, I wanna make a guy. I wanna make my own character. Okay, Spider-Man. It's just, it was really annoying, and then you find this game, and you're like, oh, it seems kind of cool, and then it's like, alright, the most insanely complicated point-buy system you've ever seen. Which has its ups and downs.
Yeah. So I was working with Booter on his character for 5 hours after stream ended.
Jesus Christ.
We were working on that. Booter was working on that character for a collective 9-10 hours. Just doing the game. So, you know, it's a... I like I said during the stream, it's a fun game. I think it's a fun game. I can't say it's a bad game, but it's definitely a game that's like, oh boy, there's a lot going on, and the game is inherently going to be flawed because it's impossible to balance. Like, it's one of the reasons why I really, really like Pathfinder, because Pathfinder allows your characters to do some really cool things, some very interesting mechanics, and all the characters and classes feel really, really well balanced. And like, its emphasis on working as a team and strategy makes the game fun. But simultaneously, I've still had my best TTRPG experiences in Anima Beyond Fantasy, and that game is probably even more broken than Mutants and Masterminds.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where I feel like if people are being honest and not deluded, if you're a big fan of something like Mutants and Masterminds, or like me, who's a big fan of Anima Beyond Fantasy, even like not even just Cam's version, even like the original version of it, I look at Anima and I'm like, this is a beautiful thing, a beautiful work of art. You have to also look at it in the same lens and be like, but this is also has all of these real problems. Like, these are the actual issues. Because I at least have my personal philosophy of, if I am a giant fan of something, I should also be the first person to levy certain critiques. And, like, I should be the person who's able to see the problems with it. Because that's how I engage with media in art, is as someone who's able to analyze and critique it honestly and earnestly.
What I'll say is, well, it's something I don't say very often, but some of my worst tabletop experiences also have happened in Anima. So
yeah.
It's... And that is also mostly just due to the system itself being horribly imbalanced. So... yeah,
the system is a lot.
It's... I'm tired of this idea in tabletop games where people are thinking like there needs to be a best, or there needs to be like some kind of hierarchy where it's just like, if you're playing Cosmic Horror, play Call of Cthulhu. Like, yeah, play Call of Cthulhu. It's a great game, but also there's other games out there that you can have fun with. You can have fun with most TTRPG games. Like the train wreck that is D&D 5e, a game that I really couldn't stand to play nowadays. A ton of people out there have ridiculous amounts of fun in that game, you know? And it's not even like a preference thing. It's just, we all interact and we all have like different values when it comes to like whatever games we're going into. And some systems suit that better than others, and it's different for everyone. So I'm excited, and even more what I'm excited for is how prolific VTTs are really coming. Like, the fact that Roll20 now can just be played in Discord is huge. That's really big. And
that's just like an immediate like good sense of advertising for people. Like just throw Roll20 in front of people, get someone going on like, oh yeah, I was working on a D&D campaign. Maybe I should get back on that.
yeah, well, it just makes it more accessible because you know what most people have nowadays? Discord. So
Yeah.
it's like, hey guys, I've been thinking about trying this game and I've set it up on Roll20. I can just hit this button right here and we can just play in the chat. I don't have to give you guys a link or anything like that. You just have to hit yes, I want to be in the game, and then bim bam boom, there you are. You can play in Discord. And like, there's a lot of games out there that are getting more and more accessibility because like Mutants and Masterminds is not a very accessible game on pen and paper.
No, that if I didn't find Hero Sheet, like absolute legend, the random guy who made that free website and tool.
Right.
If I didn't find that, it would have been a fucking nightmare. I can't do basic like math, and like the math that it wants me to do is just insane. When it was trying to like when you were like showing me the formula, I'm like immediately glazing over. Like I was like, what the fuck are you saying? And me using Hero Sheet, I was immediately like, okay, I can work and make something really cool and complicated and fun because something else is taking the heavy lifting off of me. And that's an accessibility thing. It's giving me something I wouldn't have done otherwise because I would have made a much more simplistic and boring character out of the sheer fact that I couldn't and wouldn't do the math required.
So, you know, it's interesting that tabletop is just becoming something that people can just do now. It's no longer like a setup. That's something that I feel like is just the natural progression of tabletop, because before, back in the dark ages, when you wanted to play tabletop, you all had to be in the same place. So you all had to organize whose house to go to, what snacks to do, and be there, and then try to do that regularly. I've been in many groups that have fallen apart because the whole once a week trip thing was just too much for some people. And then we got kind of VTT, which was like, it's good. It feels kind of lame. It feels like some of the sheets, it feels like it's more effort to work with the sheets, because now you have to do input stuff rather than just writing on the paper. And the virtual tabletop doesn't really seem to add much, and it kind of removes a lot of the personal aspects of doing it in person. But now we're getting to an era where it's like, okay, so now the sheet does the math for me. I can just click some options on the character sheet to make my character. And like, there's fun dice effects and some visual effects you can do, and tokens are interactable and stuff like that. And people are really just getting into it, and they can do it anytime, and you don't have to leave your house, and you don't have to set up a huge thing. You don't have to, like, one of the biggest problems with tabletop is it's really hard to do in your house sometimes because you just don't have the space a lot of the time to do it. You know, you don't have a table to play at for a lot of the time, so you have to like roll on the floor or bring a dice rolling box or whatever. And now you
amount of times I've had to bring a plastic folding table, like that long white one, because my parents had it,
right,
to my friend's place back in the day if we wanted to play D&D.
So, and this kind of all ties into what I want to talk about today, which is the Cosmere RPG. So the Cosmere RPG is a project which is being hosted, I would say, because I looked at Brotherwise Games. I looked at what games they made, which they've made some of my favorite games, like Boss Monster, really fun game, little card game you can buy and play in most places. But they haven't done TTRPG stuff, but they have so many people that they've hired onto this project who've worked on some of the biggest TTRPGs known today, like D&D, like Edge of the Empire, the Star Wars one. Even there's been some people who worked on Pathfinder 2e products as well.
There's I know there's some Warhammer devs that worked on it. There's some Fallout RPG devs that worked on it. Legend of the Five Rings, like it goes around, and if you read through the rules, you can see kind of the bones of a lot of it. And in reading through a lot of the interview stuff because I've been following this pretty closely from like Johnny McNeil, like the director of it.
Right.
It's very clear a lot of these hires are directly targeted, actually.
Yeah, to get certain things in the game.
My favorite is I asked a question like for when there was doing a Reddit AMA, because there's an aspect in the game, shard blades. Funny enough, that's literally right behind you.
Right.
And because the whole thing with shard blades is they're kind of one-shot kill weapons. If it like passes through you, it like your existence is severed. So like your spine, your heart, your brain, if it goes through it, you are just fucking dead. And it slices through like cleanly, like cuts through you like a mist. And so I asked, like, what's the method you're gonna like balance this? Because that seems really crazy to balance, to have like a one-shot kill weapon. And they said, well, shard blades are kind of treated in the same way as like lightsabers, which is why we directly wanted to work with people who worked on Edge of the Empire.
Right.
Because there's a lot of that through line you can see in elements like that, which is also why we have elements where in Stormlight, health isn't actually health, it's treated more as like your resolve and like your toughness, and you don't really take health damage, you're actually like, it's only the final hit that like is health damage. I was like, oh, okay, I see exactly what they're cooking. And they keep talking like that, of like, well, we had this thing that we wanted to do with the game, so we found people who have experience in this field, and we talked to them, and we hired them. And it's like, that is really smart. They have like really good answers for everything, and I really appreciate how much effort and thought was put into every single aspect of design.
Yeah, and honestly, they've been working a lot. They're all Ttrpg nerds, so they want to play a fun game too. And some of the problems I've had with some prior games that some of these people have made have been kind of answered. There's a big thing when it comes to like Edge of the Empire, or when it comes to Legend of the Five Rings, where it comes to opportunities or whatever that system uses, of like a vague narrative element that can be added or subtracted from a scene to make it in the player's favor or against the players if you're the GM. And some of those systems I've seen, like Legend of the Five Rings is a good example, are incredibly vague, and it's like it doesn't give you good guidance on what the limits are you can use these points or these situations for. And this game has introduced better guardrails so that you can make more informed decisions. So advanced tabletop players who are really good at improving and can come up with fun things for the game can use the system to make some interesting things happen. And cheesy players can't. My goodness, I've got like a frog in my throat. 1 second. And cheesy players can't abuse it to make weird things happen. And then for players who are not advanced, there are options that they can just choose that are really good.
Which is the elements that I see the bones of Edge of the Empire in, because it was the part when we played Legend of the Five Rings where I'm like, this is made by the same people who did the Star Wars game. I see all the elements in this. Why did they take away parts of the Star Wars game that made it work better? Like, what? Why did they do it like this? Because it's the same opportunity system,
right?
But it works worse here. Like, why did they do it like this? And then here, it's like, oh my god, it's the same opportunity system as Edge of the Empire. I'm like, this is why it's going to work good, because it works perfectly in that game, because it gives you the nebulous, and then it's like, or here is a list of things. And it's like, okay, that's perfect. That's exactly what you should do. You need to have both, because sometimes you have something nebulous, or you have a player who isn't really like you have a player who's not great at improv, but alternatively, someone who is pretty good in the moment coming up with like an opportunity, like for a story. Sometimes you are in a standard combat, and you're like, I don't have a story thing I would want to introduce here, or like there's just not a thing that would really sound interesting or fun, but I do really want this minor benefit. Like this thing would just help me. So you can just go with that. And so there's a lot of benefits to doing that kind of system of, okay, here's the stock standard things you can spend opportunity for. And it works. And literally, my only complaint with the Cosmere RPG is that it's a D20 system and not the actual unique dice system of Edge of the Empire.
Yeah.
And I understand that if they did that, they probably wouldn't have 13 million on Kickstarter right now.
Yeah, 13 million, by the way. That's insane. Even right now, we're in the last few hours, actually, of the Kickstarter campaign. And people are still, like, lining up to put money into this game. It's really good. I think the most interesting thing is, even though they went with the D20 system, which, you know, is fine, I think there's just some D20 fatigue with a lot of people. And to be fair, the D20 system is flawed because it doesn't average numbers really well. So your characters can be very flip-floppy on how well they can perform in any situation. But when it comes to this game, I think it's a really smart move because it has the same dice. Essentially, the dice works the same as it does in either D&D or Pathfinder. Now, it's a little bit more on the D&D side because there's not like this growing proficiency as you level kind of deal.
It seems like the modifiers, from what I've been reading, stay kind of lower.
Yeah, they're just not... They don't scale with the game.
The difference is that you have methods of altering how the dice roll and just rolling more often rather than having larger number like in Pathfinder.
Well, and there's also like the plot die, which is really interesting because either a good opportunity happens where you can make something happen in a scene that's beneficial to you, or you get a complication, but the complication increases the result you get by either 2 or 4 points, which is pretty huge in a game that uses kind of the more limited numbers. But something, you know, like bad or inconvenient happens. So they do a lot of failing forward. They do a lot of like, your characters who are good at things are typically really good at those kind of things with some of how their difficulty numbers are set up. And one of the biggest aspects I really like with this game is they stole Pathfinder's 3-action system.
Yeah.
And they elevated it by adding a new layer to combat where there's now fast turns and slow turns. So fast turns allow you to go before other characters, but you only get to spend 2 actions. While slow turns, you get 3 actions, but you move after the fast characters. Not only that, but this uses a player-first initiative system. And what that means is the players act in any of those 2 brackets first before the enemies do. So it goes fast players, fast enemies, slow players, slow enemies. So the players have the ultimate say in what happens in a combat situation and always move before an enemy typically will. So the players will get more actions than enemies in combat, which is good. Now, some people are like, well, but that's bad because now the game is easier. Now it's easier for the players. And to that, I'm going to say then the GM has every right to add enemies with bigger numbers on them to make up the difference. Like, the problem is never how hard the enemies are. The GM can infinitely make enemies more difficult if necessary. what the difficulty should be based on is how the players interact with the game. And so this system makes it, you don't have to roll initiative. You can work together to do really cool things on your guys' turns. And the enemies are probably still really dangerous because the GM could be like, all right, you guys can handle this threat, you know? Because going first in initiative is really strong. It essentially means you get to act typically more often than the enemy does. So you can make the enemy that much harder. Make the numbers they need to hit that much higher. And we don't know what the essentially the classes. There's not really a class system. It's more of like what the power systems are. And this is the thing that I think is going to really revolutionize TTRPGs. It's something that's been worked on a lot, and a lot of games have tried this, which is a universal system, which I don't like the idea of universal systems. I want games to mechanically work differently so that I can play different kinds of games. But unlike D&D, which has different settings where you can play the same kind of characters, but there's different kind of like ramifications or whatever, this system is going to have a whole nother power class set on top of the basic rules. And why I feel like it works with the Cosmere and is going to be revolutionary when it's been tried many times before. I mean, with like Powered by the Apocalypse, or the engine that Blades in the Dark uses.
Oh, I just had it. It disappeared.
Which came from initially Powered by the Apocalypse anyway. That's it. It has its own things.
Isn't it the engine?
Yeah, it's the engine.
The something. I feel like it's the something engine. I forget the name.
I can't remember. But the thing is, this works, and this is a thing that is more unifying, because while a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse games have like different class systems on top of them, or different like ways you can build your character, the games all operate on kind of rules light kind of system. I mean, Blades in the Dark, even that's kind of rules light because there's a lot of wiggle room and interpretations you can do with a lot of things. This is a more hard system that is going to have a universal set of rules that actually will be universal, because the core mechanics, like how you do your dice and all that kind of stuff, are going to stay the same. But now the powers, the classes, all that kind of stuff are going to be different. And on top of that, there's going to be some interconnected threads, and the Cosmere is the perfect setting type for this, because it all makes sense in the lore. It's all super well thought out. It's all applies to things that you can read about and get invested in and all that kind of stuff. There's great art. The characters are interesting. Like, it's the first time a real solid world building system was placed in the TTRPG space to do things with, because like, we have to admit, D&D, Pathfinder, there's a lot of inconsistencies, or there's a lot of things that don't make sense in those settings on like how they work, or what, like why some things happen and some things don't. And the Cosmere is just more thought out, more well thought out, and is a lot more interesting. And so we're going to see interesting game mechanics built on a system, on a lore that is well more thought out and makes more sense, and is going to draw people in, because people can imagine what kind of characters can exist in that setting. They don't have to worry about like, what can I do? What can I do? Like, what can I be? Someone raised by dragons in D&D? And it's just like, well, yeah, technically, if that's your backstory, it's like, okay, but what does that mean? You know?
Yeah. And with how it's working in the Cosmere RPG, I think is gonna like work really well, since how it's gonna be working is, instead of just like, I am a fighter, I am a wizard. It's more like skill trees that you buy perks into. And you can buy like a couple perks and then immediately jump to another perk tree. And you could just buy one perk from every skill tree if you wanted to, or hard jump into one, or even just two. And like that's how you can get into the other full stuff. I think the only restriction is if you pick a radiant path for like Stormlight, you can only pick one of them because you can't be multiple radiant paths, which does give you access to multiple power sets. But each like game system is like setting is going to have its own power, because actually for one of the Kickstarter updates, I saw this just like yesterday. They showed off the design diary for Mistborn, and I'm not super familiar with Mistborn yet. I want to read it once I finish up with Stormlight, but I know that it's called the Metallic Arts, and it's all about like just manipulating metal, and like what type of metal you can manipulate is really important, of like steel, iron, copper, because it's like industrial age fantasy is the vibe.
Mm-hmm.
And the one they show off is called Steel Allomancy. And like a big element of it is called pushing and pulling. I know that too, because characters use it to basically fly. As you just start flying around because you're pushing yourself away from the steel of the city, I think is how it works. But it's cool because you can also throw coins and then manipulate your coin with such manipulation that you're pushing it like it's a bullet.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool, and each one's gonna have a different thing. So it's like, yeah, well, what do you want? Do you want the Mistborn's kind of metal powers, or do you want Roshar's like, I want to be an Else Caller. I want to change a piece of matter into a different type of matter. Or I want to be a Windrunner, and I want to control the skies and manipulate gravity. And also to the point where it's so detailed that it's like gamified, because when you read the books, it's my favorite element of the books when they start getting into the magic system, is like you read it and you're like, this would be perfect for a game, like a tabletop game, just because I can see myself asking the same questions the characters are, of like, okay, these are the rules of my power, can I do this, is this a thing I'm allowed to do? And then they try it, and sometimes the answer is no, and sometimes the answer is yes.
Thank you, Voldemort. Yeah, I have a lot of high hopes for this system. It has a lot of very big names in the TTRPG scene like behind it, and the fact that the author himself, Brandon Sanderson, is working with the system to make it better and to make it, lore accurate and everything like that. I feel like we're just going to get a world that feels very put together, and I think that's my problem with like Pathfinder or D&D, where they can feel very hodgepodge at times. Some of the events just don't feel like they relate or work against each other. There's all kinds of things happening, and like, while I definitely think the stories are interesting, and I haven't read like any of the D&D books, or I haven't read God's Reign, which just came out for Pathfinder, like, I'm sure there's lots of really, really good stories, but that doesn't mean the way it feels when you're in the system actually matches up. And one of the great parts about the Cosmere is now you don't need a system where you're constantly adding in new ancestries to kind of like spice things up to make things players can interact with. Because that's a big thing in like tabletop, is like, oh, what new ancestries do I have options to? Which feels very weird, because it's just like, oh, so these just people existed and I didn't know before because they hadn't come out yet. That's weird. In the Cosmere stuff, everything's pretty set. I don't think there's gonna be new like races or ancestries introduced into these settings. Instead, unless
like the books do, like yeah, that's the only way, is if the books do. And then they're like, and then like a year or two later, they're like, hey guy, new supplement.
Well, yeah, but see, that like that has there'll be some story like reason for it. you know?
Yeah, there's a justification because, like, yeah, the only time that happens in like Stormlight, it happens at the beginning where they're like that literally is a plot point right before the story happens. Is like 7 years before the book takes place. They're like, oh wait a second, there's another race of like not humans on this world, just over here in this area, like that we just didn't know about. And it's like, well, why didn't they discover them? Oh, it's because they're in a desolate area that's a horrible desert hellscape that no one else wants to live in. Why would they travel? And the closest country was embroiled in a massive war with their neighbors and then a civil war, so they had no time to like explore this barren wasteland. And it was like, oh yeah, that's fair enough. But like that's the kind of justification we'd get, other than like, hey, we got new mechanics. What's up, guys? Then here's a lore blurb. Which,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's the difference, I think, between when you have a setting that is a setting built for a tabletop game and a setting that's and a tabletop game built for a setting. And also what helps is when you have a piece of like writing and lore that's written by like one person rather than a bunch of people, and a bunch of rotating people who like come in, then like leave the company, then the new people come in who are inspired by the game, have their own ideas for what this world is, and then they leave, and like so on, so on, so on, the cycle continues. Instead, it's just like one coherent vision the entire time.
Yeah. And not only that, but like I feel like the Cosmere is going to be much more hesitant to drop in new ancestries to, you know, just because it won't make sense for the game world, and Brandon's not going to introduce a bunch of stuff that's going to break the continuity for his game. So
no, it's going to be like the one element that's being added for like, do you want to mess with the canon stuff, is literally like there's a minor plot point that was dropped in book 2, and it's like, well, let's explore that.
Yeah.
It's like a throwaway line at the end of book 2 and beginning of book 3. It's a small throwaway line of, oh, what happened to like this thing? And it's like, oh, we don't really know. And it's like, okay. It's like, well, let's have the players discover that.
Yeah, which is really cool. And so, like, this is, I think, the biggest thing tabletop has really been needing, which is just a very solid setting. Like, incredibly solid. Like, game mechanic wise, it's going to be interesting, and hopefully they do some really cool stuff with this. I mean, from everything I've heard from Star Wars Edge of the Empire, they did their power systems essentially very interesting. The different I think it's archetypes, or...
Yeah, it's like literally the exact same as this.
Yeah, are very interesting, and they give you things you can do. Your characters will feel like they are powerful, and the power scaling can be, you know, as big or small as you want it, depending on what kind of campaign you want to run. And it's all going to be something that, like, makes a lot of sense. That's why I am excited about it, because, like, I've harped on it enough today, but I want a game I can really sink my teeth into when it comes to the setting, because, like, we played Anima Beyond Fantasy for a while, and that setting is not being, like, the game wasn't being updated all the time, so it stayed pretty stable. And so there was not, like, whenever I was designing my interpretation of the game's, like, canon, then I didn't have to worry about new things, or like why there's now this new race of people that the players had to deal with, or whatever. But when it comes to something like D&D, Pathfinder, you have so many different peoples intermixing all the time that them being different ancestries isn't really important. It can't be. The world, like, you can't have a million cultures all intermixing in a setting and have it be stable, you know. It's going to seem weird that some like ancestries have existed but just weren't mentioned up until this point, or that a city made of like 15 different peoples really can coexist or just act like normal people. It's something where in this setting the different peoples are very important, and there's not like a de-emphasis on their cultures. You find the people where those people are, kind of situation. So I'm looking forward to it. I think that there's a lot of very solid foundations for players to really interact within a world. And I'm not saying that Pathfinder or D&D are bad because they introduce a million ancestries. The games are more designed for you to do whatever you want to do with it anyway. And players like options. And that's always going to be a thing, is players are going to like options. They want to try new things. They want to make new little guys, you know. And that's completely fine, but it does leave a want for some people to have something that's just more stable, something you can more build off of, something you can just know and know about, you know, because it's really hard to know about D&D or Pathfinder because new stuff comes out all the time, and sometimes there's just no rhyme or reason to it. So, you know, the Cosmere, I think, is going to be a very strong rock bed for tabletop moving forward. An example of this is how you do not D&D / Pathfinder for a setting and world and for a game system. But who knows? You know, they could fall short of that goal. They could release these books and be like, it's really, really cool, and then do nothing else with like no expansions, no new stuff, anything like that. Like, the games would be great for like a year and then die off to their niche community. There's a lot of things that can go wrong.
Yeah, I can see it like blowing up and like at the very least being very popular for people who are fans of just Sanderson, because like that honestly is, I think, the hurdle I foresee is largely like people looking at the Cosmere RPG and then being like, oh, that's cool, oh wait a sec, this is based on like a book, well, I probably should read the stuff first, and then they just don't play it. And it's when like, no, these are actually designed, like, you don't have to, you can, you get a lot out of it if you read it, but like, and you should, they're very good, but like you don't have to. And like, if your GM at least has read it, it's probably gonna work a lot better for them, because I think if you want to learn how the setting works, the books are probably the absolute greatest ways to do that, because it's the best like lesson, I think, that could be taught of how to naturally teach somebody like do expository information for world lore I've ever seen in a narrative, instead of just like, let's do the opening chapter like lore dump. Instead it's like, nope, we're gonna naturally break this down over the course of like an entire book. And it's like, I've retained all of this shit. The amount of I made an entire video script, I barely checked like the wiki. I double checked that I was saying things correctly. And but like, I retained it. And that's hard for me. I don't have the greatest memory.
Same.
It takes a lot of repetition for me to remember stuff. And I remembered it because it was done just so well. So like, I think it's probably like really good to do that. But I see that being like one of the big hurdles for people. Is just kind of, that's the jumping away point of being like, oh, I have to, like, it's now not the, oh, I have to learn a new system. It's, oh, I have to learn this new setting. It looks really complicated. Maybe, when it's like, no, you don't have to.
I don't know, because the thing is like, one of the next biggest played TTRPGs out there is Call of Cthulhu, which is based on books. But I don't feel like that's the same problem a lot of people have trying to get into the Call of Cthulhu game, you know?
Yeah, because like the Cthulhu stuff, mythos is so like ubiquitous and like delve through just cultural osmosis of like, I know Cthulhu. I know of it because I exist in pop culture, and then you hear of like Yog Shoggoth, who the fuck is that guy? It's like, I don't know about that one. I know about the one guy.
Yeah.
And then like, you know, that extent of like, I know the vibes of Lovecraft because I exist in pop culture, which is I think the difference. But I still think that it, you know, it is a big campaign, a big tabletop game that is based off of literary work, and it is popular. I do think that is a fair point. I just see that, like, I see it more like what I'm saying as another excuse people will make to not switch from whatever one game they're married to. Because I do think that the, like, I don't want to learn a new game, to me sometimes sounds like I just don't want to switch. This is my quick excuse for it. And then it's like, oh, but this game's like D&D. It's like, you have to do, like, basically no learning. Oh, I don't want to have to learn the new world.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's the thing. If people are that hesitant, they're not going to do it anyway.
Exactly.
So that's not
it's just
really a good way to go about it. You have to think more about what people generally find interesting. And that's one thing I am concerned about the general marketing for the game currently, is a lot of what you see for a lot of the marketing are characters, which makes a lot of sense, but they're just like people doing kind of fantasy things, and that's not interesting. This image behind me, this guy, this plate armor here that he's wearing, you know, the shard plate, that looks cool. That's something that you put on the cover of a book, and I'm gonna be like, okay, and what's this about? It looks kind of medieval, but that looks like it's like got tech, you know. That's my concern, is how much of the advertising are going to be characters because they're recognizable because you read the books or you've seen the media, versus how much of the material is just really cool on a surface level, because that's what's going to make people pick up a particular product. And at the end of the day, is looking at the book, is the art inspiring? Do they flip through the book and see characters and see those characters doing interesting things that make them want to play the game? Because if it's just a bunch of pictures of like the characters from the books or whatever, it's going to have like half the impact. Sure, some of them do look interesting, but they're not fantasy enough typically. A lot of them are wearing like slight fantasy clothing and doing something kind of cool, but they're not like deep fantasy clothing, like the extra shit.
A chunk of them are, like, a chunk of the promotional material are like characters, but right. Like there's one of them that is like it's the one where there's the three characters standing like back to back against a bunch of the people that this character is fighting, the Parshendi. Those are like three of some of the main like POV characters. But then meanwhile there's another piece of like promotional material where they have like a bunch of the example like types of characters you can play, like here's a Knight Radiant, like a Windrunner you can play, here's an Artifabrian. Those are that's just character art. None of those are like characters in the books, to my knowledge. But like they're mixing it around, and because like right here is, I think, really good impactful art. Which is, I also think, like, really good cover art is actually that one of, like, the three of those main characters standing back to back. Because, you have those elements of, like, okay, you have a girl holding a cool sword. You have a guy, he's floating with a cool spear. That's kind of sick. Okay, that armor is sick as fuck. Who are these red guys? And, like, there's a lot of those elements that kind of stand out. And then there's other parts of, like, all right, that's just kind of a dude.
Yeah, I don't know. It has to, like, unfortunately, to capture people's immediate attention, you need your fantasy art to be kind of extra, because it looks cool, it looks interesting, and it's fascinating, rather than just people. Even if it's like Caden floating with a spear, being really cool, you know. A lot of his art, he's like wearing kind of like a military outfit in a sense.
Yeah, that's just what he wears.
Yeah. And it's like, it's okay, but that's not super interesting gear, you know, when you compare it to like this armor. This is interesting. This is inspiring. You know. So it really is going to depend. And for Kaleidoscope, so let me tell you, backing now versus waiting, I don't think there's a need. Like, backing was important when the game needed to be backed, but most of the prices when it comes to the backing, because I personally have backed $100, which, by the way, you got 2 hours to back for anyone who's listening now. But $100 is going to get me 2 hardcover books and 2 PDFs, and then I added on an extra where I'm going to get a extra set of plot dice, so I can have more plot dice, because they're a unique die, and I think they're interesting, and I think it makes the game more fun to have that kind of stuff. For 2 books, $100 is about what you're gonna pay anyway. I may have saved, like, depending, $20, give or take, maybe, and even less maybe if we're considering, like, if you did it in 3 years or 4 years, the books might go down in price, and then technically I paid more than I would have if I had waited a few years. But
yeah, because like the stuff that going through the Kickstarter stuff when it drops is, like they said, the game secured some funding beforehand too, and so they needed the extra money, but also like their stretch goals, for example. A lot of the Cosmere RPG elements were going to be stretch goals originally, but then weren't necessary. And so, like, you're not really paying... They don't need all the money for stretch goals, which is what normally you want to, like, oh, you guys, everyone pay for it now. We want to get these really cool things. You're more, like, possibly saving the $20. You're also paying upfront for stuff that's going to drop in, like, way later, whenever the Mistborn stuff gets, like, finished. So you're paying stuff now, and then you're also doing an upfront cost later. So it's probably going to be the same price. I am personally waiting for, because I know myself, I just want a basic PDF file. Like, that's all I want. I just want the PDFs. And it seems like from some of the stuff they're talking about here, they're like, oh, we'll give you a PDF for Roll20, and it's like, I just want a PDF. And I want the PDF when it's out, and I can fully read it. So, like, I'll just wait. Yeah. And also I want the setting book when that comes out. That one I'm buying hardcover. So I'll just have the moment whenever they drop the shop, I'll just buy it then.
Yeah. I picked the Stormlight book and then the setting book.
I'm so excited for the setting book. It's going to have a bunch of just new lore, apparently.
So, you're not getting any major deals. It doesn't need the extra support pretty much at this point. And I can't foresee, especially with how well it's done, that you're going to receive the books in any, like, more of an expedited fashion, maybe a month before anyone else does. But it's probably going to go out in store around the time that it starts shipping out. So do so if you just think you're going to get it anyway, and if you have the money now.
It's kind of just a fancy pre-order, to be completely honest. Because it seemed like they were trying to go for, like, a real Kickstarter, and then secured, like, fancy funding. And then we're like, oh, well, okay, now we can do a lot of cool extra shit. Which, fair enough. Like, if that's the method they can do. Because, I was reading through the stretch goals, and they were like, it sounds like they had plans for all those stretch goals, and then we're like, well... let's just make these all extra goodies that we're going to give you.
So, don't pressure yourself into it. It's not like some other Kickstarters that are like, hey, get the books for half price off if you support us now.
Yeah, and they're not hurting for it. It's like, the Patrick Star, now we're gonna starve thing. They have 13 million. They're fine.
But I got it because, one, I'm gonna want to anyway, and I'm gonna review this stuff, so it's like, almost a work expense I could write off. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know how much work expenses I need to actually spend in a year to make them anywhere like reasonable to put on my taxes. Probably not a lot.
I had the answer, but it's I was talking about it with my mom because she does a lot of accounting stuff and
Right.
with her business, and so she was like going all in about like getting a business license and going all that, because there's a threshold to where if you are doing YouTube, you should, just for a lot of benefits, get a business license.
Right. Yeah.
And then that's when you can start, like, that's the point where you can start writing stuff off really easily.
I'll worry about that when I make like more than 20,000 a year or something like that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right now, I'm barely making like, I don't know. It'll be better now, actually. My like, I took a week off this month. I'm still making $300 this month, so definitely going to be seeing some better numbers moving forward, at least until January. But so yeah, I don't know. I think the Cosmere is interesting, and there's a lot of potential here. Does it have a chance to flop or be not impactful? Yeah, totally, for sure. Nothing. If anyone should know anything in our current day and age of overhype, nothing is safe from just flopping. There's always a chance that a thing can flop.
I at least see it being just a niche popular thing for like nerds who are, I am a fan of Sanderson, and like those are the people who are really playing it after like a year or so. And I don't know, some of the thing is because I see people who are reviewing it. It's like the negative reviews I saw from people who've play tested it were people that I think were being a little unfair, and it's the bit where we've got annoyed with people who were doing the same kind of shit to Pathfinder, where they're reviewing it and it feels like they're coming at it from bad faith, and they're coming at it from a lens of like, well, this isn't D&D. And so I like these elements, but the elements that aren't Dungeons and Dragons are things that I didn't like.
Right.
And it's like, what? Then what the hell are you talking about?
Well,
like, I don't. That's the annoying part. I found so many articles that were like, this game is pretty cool. I like the parts that have you roll a d20, add a modifier. That's nice and familiar. The plot dice, unfamiliar. I do not like.
Yeah. Well, on top of that as well, I don't know why they put this beta test out, to be completely honest, because it's just the bare basic part of the game, like the core game. It's like, imagine playing D&D without the classes.
Yeah, I assume it was just marketing to see what they were cooking up. But when I was going through it, I'm like, yeah, there isn't much that I would ever be like, let's play a little demo game of this. It's more like, I'm happy that I can see that you've done work. This is promotional and reason I'd want to give you money. This is not like I'm going to get my friends in Demiplane and get cooking.
Yeah, it feels just very bare bone, and there's no meat to the beta test, which is so weird. I appreciate it as someone who creates content because I can look at the rules and I can guess how the system is overall going to work, but there was nothing to really do. You know, you just play a character who's just trained in some skills, and that's about it. And that's really weird for a playtest to like put out. And like, I know there's going to be so much more if you are keeping up to the Kickstarter and all the community posts, the Twitter, and seeing all the stuff. They got a lot. There's a lot of really cool systems they're working on that they have stuff written for. It's just not in the beta test, which is, again, super strange. Also, we have another terrible case. I still need to make a video on this. Another terrible case of should have been in the Discord, because there's a lot of cool stuff that comes out in the Discord that you just can't find anywhere else. And it's like, I see. Like,
I hate that.
It's, again, I think this can be revolutionary. I think the game can be really, really good. I feel like it is primed, and there's enough people who like it and are interested in it. Like, literally, just when this was just about to come out, Jacksepticeye was talking about reading the Stormlight archive. And I feel like the more people who get invested in this, which there are a lot of celebrity people who are also invested in this game as well. When you look at, you know, their Twitter page and the kind of the people who are liking some of their stuff or who are following them. So, you know, I feel like if a spark happens in the internet celebrity circles that gets this game recognized, we're in for a really, really good time. But that's like any game, right? That's like any indie game. Any indie game could do really, really well if the proper content creator makes content on them.
Discord being a file sharing service and a promotional service is a bane of my existence. I don't want to join your fucking Discord server. I don't want to join it. I just put it on your Twitter, put it on a public thing. I don't want to be there. I don't care because people are talking and trying to socialize and I don't want to be there.
We have a Discord.
We do, but it's different. If we were using our Discord to promote like file share, I would be not happy about it. And I wouldn't be very against that, which we don't do because I'm involved. So not, you know, releasing stuff and like working on a large project like that. And I hate it. I would have a public facing element like that. I do not like this element where everyone's just like, oh, you gotta join our Discord, and then there's just a fuck ton of channels where they're just like, how are you doing today? It's like, I don't care. Give me the file. Yeah. If you're gonna do it, give me a Discord server that's literally just announcements, files, no element for people to talk, no community, no socializing. Give me the thing.
Yeah, or you know, just have a website.
Or just have a fucking website.
Have a website.
Or just a Twitter.
So you can go on, look it up. You type it into the internet, beep boop bop, Cosmere RPG, and everything about it is there. You know.
I know file sharing is expensive, and that is a real reason why Discord is used. But I hate it. 'Cause I don't want to join.
You happen in normal forums? Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Good question. I would like to know too.
I was never active in normal forums, but they were useful because anytime I looked up a random tidbit, they'd answer a question.
Yep. Now you're just like, or you can find us on our Discord where our mods will more than happily answer your questions. It's just like,
ask
but
them
not
the question.
Here. Why not here? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's another form of social currency, essentially. It's like how many Discord members you have. So, and I get it. I have a Discord, right? We have a Discord here on the channel, and
we do, and it's great. And
it's
I will continue my own little protest. For example, I'm saying it here. We'll see if it ever happens. I'm never making a community Discord for myself. I'm never doing it because I'm like, I just don't want it. I've also, by the way, the only community Discord I am in and active for a content creator is you.
Yeah.
And I think there's a very clear difference between that and like another YouTuber content creator.
Yeah. Well, you know, I also wanted to make a space for TTRPG players to find each other, to talk about games, or, you know, just to see all the stuff we're doing or what games we're talking about, because we've done some great stuff on the Discord.
Yeah.
And I think it's fine for content creators and stuff to have a Discord. I just hate it when it's like for a product or for a game, because it's like, I just want to look up this information. I'm not looking to join your community, you know. I just, you know, to be fair, there are, like, I am in the pilot.net Lancer Discord, and I'm in the Pathfinder creator Discord as well, for their content creators. But, you know, because those are the groups I decide to associate with. I don't want to have to do it for every single game. Yeah, it's tragic. I really need to make a video on why Discord sucks for gaming.
Just the impermanence of it. Like, you know, it's fine if people have community Discords and all that. Power to you. You typical, like, or just YouTube community stuff, and like on my end, the idea of like me as like the man, Alex, hello, doing it gives me hives, and I don't like it. But other people doing it or helping another person do it is a degree of separation where I find it fine. But like, if I had a Glue Boy server, I think I would just not like it. And also, I would eventually get lazy and stop because I just kind of forget.
I mean, I barely post in my own Discord. It's very rare.
That's fair. I post in there because I think it's fun. And once in a while, people post some fun stuff in there. Yeah. And I think it's fun to engage with. So,
to be fair,
we got some cool people.
Not a Discord person in general.
I just got it on my second monitor. I see a blip, and I'm like, what is that? Because I have to look at notifications.
I mean, I do that. I just rarely message or do anything. Like, we have our friend Discord. I barely do anything in that.
That's fair, though. We message a lot. There's a lot of blips.
But yeah, so, you know, the Cosmere RPG can be really good. It's based on a already, I think, pretty rock solid system. The setting is stellar, and the energy behind it is huge. I mean, like, this art is hype, and there's so much art, and there's so many people who are really, really into it, and I think it just needs to catch some fire in the circles when we're getting closer to actually, like, release. Like, next Gen Con is when I think we're going to hear more stuff about the game, and we're going to see a lot more general interest and hype for its release, like, a month or so after Gen Con. So I feel like we have something really potentially good on our hands here. I haven't felt like this for a game in like a while. Now, I will be honest and say that I haven't seen anything yet, mechanically speaking, that has overly tickled me. You know, the game's got good bones. I'd be like, that's a game. That's a good game. But I haven't seen anything yet where I'm like, I have to play this game. I haven't had that moment where I had with Lancer or with Fabula Ultima where I'm like, I have to play this game. The game looks too fun. I need to like get some people together to play this game. Yet, I feel like that will change when we get the actual like meat of the system, which are the setting books.
And I think also just more of the paths and the like character stuff, because like we know a couple of the like the heroic paths and the radiant paths so far, because I think the only ones they've shown so far are the scholar path and the Duskbringer radiant path, which gives you access to some genuinely like I think some mechanically interesting abilities. Stuff where you start like it gets the ideas turning with like how they interact. It's elements like that where it's like, okay, I already can think of how I can maybe intersect just these two different paths together, which each of which has 3 separate trees, which I want to see how they interact, because I think even the first ability for the scholar allows you every single day you can change 3 of your mental proficiencies. Like every morning, which is really cool. That's I think that promotes a lot of really fun, intelligent character like building. Also, because the whole idea for that is like you're playing an intelligent character. You're not an intelligent character by locking down into like a couple subjects. Your character can do research. And how do we mechanicalize like research? Well, your character read about this recently. And then like the Dustbringer having elements of like abrasion and the other one of turning off friction, and then having like doing the speed up, ignoring certain types of terrain, and just working around that, and like how it just affects mobility. It's like, oh, okay, I can see how this works. And I'm waiting for the fucking Windrunners to drop. I want to see how they're gonna do gravity manipulation.
Everyone is waiting for the Windrunners to drop.
I just need to see how they're gonna do gravity manipulation so bad. Because I'm like, that shit lets you fly. Like, full on. I want to lash myself to the sky and fall. Because that's more accurate to how it works. But, like, I want to do that. I want to slap somebody and have them fly into the sky. Like, that's mechanically going to be a thing. How is it going to be expressed?
Also, another mechanic that I really, really like are the events that can happen. So, during a game, the GM can set a thematic event, like the coming of a storm or the Stormlight. And how that event comes across is, in the case of like a negative event, every time a complication is rolled, the GM can put that complication, rather than negatively affecting the story or one of the characters, towards the event. And conversely, there can be positive events where you can put your opportunities towards that to have that kind of happen. I love the idea behind this because it makes the scene tense. Imagine you're all out. You have a big fight to like enter into like this castle or keep to stop like this despot. But unfortunately, the day of the raid, a storm is coming in that could completely ruin the raid if you guys fail to get inside the keep before the storm arrives. Otherwise, everything just goes terribly wrong. And so you're fighting, and every time someone is rolling the dice, you're like, please don't roll a 1, please don't roll a 1, please don't roll a 1. Because every time you roll a 1, it's a complication. And every time someone does roll a 1, it's like the storm surges a bit and gets closer and more dangerous, and it's like, oh god, are we gonna make it through? I don't know.
I will say, could this be a GM nightmare? Is there a lot of rules and tables to help guide the GM rather than having the GM legislate from the bench? From everything I have looked,
what? Exactly.
Yeah, like I guess just in what game would you put this on like the threshold? But like this game is going to be a crunchy experience. This is not a simplistic game, which is something that they're very open about, which I'm happy for, because I'm really tired of every single new game being a streamlined, simplified experience. I want a game that actually has mechanics and weight to it, but everything I've looked for has a lot of elements of giving GMs, honestly, a lot of like methods of doing things. And I mean, it basically, if you're proficient in like running D&D, it's just adding extra shit to it. Like you just have opportunity for improv moments, or even like the endeavors, I think is another thing they have where you have a event that's like, okay, that it's a template that they give you. Like you want to do this thing, you want to break into a mansion is one of the examples they give. To break into a mansion, there's going to be a difficulty level of this. The average DC is like a 15, and you have to at least succeed 3 times with a failure threshold of 3 times. And like that is how you have to go through it. And they have a bunch of templates like that for many different events, and also there's one for like social combat. There's a template that you can utilize because it's like a basic social combat style.
Yeah, conversations. That's what it's called.
Yeah. There's elements where they lay things out and then give you tables to like, here is the simple gamified elements of it for you to build a narrative around, and then here's just the bones of like the mechanics to like actually what do you need to deal with, which I think is how it's laid out is very well done. Like it's really understandable, really expert level. I was like going through it, like reading it, like getting really inspired through. So I think it's not going to be that difficult of a game to GM. I think it's going to be a very easy process, especially if you've GM'd other games. I think it's going to be a breeze.
Yeah, honestly, especially with how they've taken the idea of, they're very knowledgeable, and it seems like they're very aware that open systems are not what people want. They don't want systems that are super vague, that allow for players to do things rather than guides players to do things. And there's been a lot of evidence of that, like some of the core mechanics that you interact with, like focus, which is kind of like focus points. It's like a resource you use to use some more powerful maneuvers. If you get an opportunity, you can restore focus. So that's something that's very easily like obvious to a player is a good thing. And they have a lot more things that are similarly like, okay, these are very impactful mechanics, but they also give this little extra wiggle room of like, okay, but when you get an idea, when you think about a thing that might be good for the scene, you can interject, you can edit the story essentially, and add a thing or change an outcome. One of the examples they gave was like you're trying to rough a guy up to get information out of him, and if you roll a opportunity, even if you failed the check, you can make it where you pickpocketed the guy instead, which might give you a clue towards the information you were trying to get, rather than like actually, succeeding the check even though you failed. So there's a lot of opportunities for the game to introduce hard mechanics that do very specific things while allowing for wiggle room. And I feel like, especially with the people they have working on this game, they're people who have been for the longest time in the industry working on the solution of how do you have an answer for anything that can happen in a TTRPG situation? Which is a hard question, because it's really hard to make mechanics for everything. And when you do make a mechanic for everything, then you have really annoying tables and math to do a lot of the times that slow the game down and really don't add to the fun. So I feel like we're going to get a really strong blend of mechanics with narrative elements. Hey, Gray, thanks for the raid. Oh, my alerts have not been changed. We get superhero alerts today.
Woohoo!
Woo. But we're definitely in for a situation where I feel like we're going to start seeing a lot of very cool things coming out of this game. I just wish the beta tests had a little bit more meat on its bones, if I'm going to be honest.
Like, I was really, like, I had enough fun looking through, like, what are going to be the mechanics of it. But, like, I genuinely was, like, I wanted to see some of the character stuff, which I know I think they're just still working on. Because, like, the stuff they released was the stuff that was, like, finished. And so, like, a lot of it was just not ready to show, is the problem. I know that there's enough that is in, like, a rough playtest state, which people have played and have stated that is fun. Because I know that a lot of the playtest talk like material where people have been interviewed and talked about like their experiences playing some of the other Radiant Paths, for example. There's been every single person that has come back from a playtest, like has not even like from their company, by the way, not just like advertising material where they're obviously going to say the game is good. Everyone has come back saying like, okay, this game's fucking cooking. Like, there's something really cool to it.
Yeah.
And that's pretty sick. And like, everyone's really excited about just some element of the game. I think one element that pops out to me for some players that I know of, especially in our group, is I think it's going to appeal to people. The fact that characters, you can design them in a way where you can have very clear, I guess, like party roles. Mm-hmm. Like, it's they wanted to make something to where not every character is going to be like a combat class. Yeah. And like, not every character is going to be wielding a sword and like a knife and stabbing people in the throat. Sometimes you are a book nerd and you read damn good. And you know what? the idea of fighting somebody is kind of scary. And they found a lot of methods to make it so even when combat happens, mechanically speaking, you have stuff to do that still feels good. And they found a lot of methods for this, and from what people are saying, it's pretty hype.
Yeah.
So if you like support, you like playing a debuff kind of playstyle, you like really supporting your allies, you're gonna have a lot of cool methods of doing it.
So some of the stuff, like I'm looking right now at the one of the Radiant Pass, the crap, which one is it? The Dustbringer.
The Dustbringer.
And for people who are concerned, like, oh, is this just going to be a more of a narrative light game kind of deal, like some of like how Legend of the Five Rings can kind of feel like sometimes. I'm looking at the path now and what abilities you can pick up, because they are trees. You can just straight up like pick and choose what abilities you want to get for your character and mix this beyond different paths and different things your characters can do. They're just straight up like Pathfinder abilities. Like one of them, which is igniting division, is you spend a resource to light the target space on fire, dealing ongoing damage equal to your division modifier in that space. That's essentially a Pathfinder ability. Or you can get things like invested. Your maximum number of investiture, which is a resource, increases by your tier. Or there is select combat, where you can interrupt any move action with other actions, and it allows you to do any attack and keep moving. You attack essentially on the fly. So these are all super mechanical things, super like systems. You can be like, that's a cool power. That's something I can see in Pathfinder 2nd edition. And it's not, in fact, I'm reading this here, there's really not any that I would say are overly narrative specific and not mechanical in the slightest. They all seem incredibly like, what you do is exactly what you do.
Yeah, I think the only bit you could say is like probably more actually not even maybe even full narrative, because they still give you a benefit, is going to be stuff that is going down the Ash Spren's bond for bonding your specifically increasing your bond with your Spren, which is going to be what lets you go down your bond and saying the next ideal, but which give you benefits. They let you like get your cool shard blade, your unique shard blade, and like all that.
Yeah.
And those are specifically kind of like the mechanical elements of you are deepening your relationship with the NPC that you have to have now with you, your little familiar, because you are Radiant. But then, yeah, you have all these like very mechanical abilities. And yeah, the only difference between this and like the Star Wars system is that this is laid out directly as trees rather than like kind of swirling around the page all weird.
Yeah.
It's laid out differently.
And I'm looking here. I'm looking at the Scholar heroic path now. And most of these abilities are either skill-based ones, which is obvious, or literally like in Surgeon, when you strike someone with an unarmed attack, you can spend focus or an opportunity to make them exhausted. Like, they're not narrative kind of vague, like, oh, your character's great at surgery and knows the weak points on a person's body. They may be able to inflict, specific conditions on a strike, and you're like, okay, but what conditions? What are you telling me, to make up the conditions or choose and make the GM say whether that condition works or not? No, they tell you exactly what they do. So this game is a bit chunky, a little hefty, that just has the opportunity for more freedom when it comes to telling the narrative. And
I like how efficient that is all laid out with like the text.
Yeah, it's also really good. And the abilities are not super chunky. Like, the biggest one is 2 sentences.
Exactly.
They tell you exactly what they do. There's no extra texts to like give an interesting story element to it or anything like that. It's just purely mechanically, this is what it does. And that's great, because then they can put that more flavorful text in other parts of the book describing like how some things are, or describing the setting or whatever like that. Like, it would make my job so much easier to have these tiny little perfect boxes when I do any of my videos. They'd be like, here's what it does, rather than like have to squeeze in because the box has so much text, because so much is being explained or whatever.
Also, the less text like that, it's just, there's less room for ambiguity. It's just like,
exactly.
It's this and it's this. This is what it does. It's like a sentence or two sentences, and it's like, well, what about this wiggle room? It's like, there's no room for the wiggle room. It's just this.
Oh my god. So let me tell you a situation where Pathfinder, a game that I would say is pretty hefty and pretty well thought out, does this really, really annoyingly. So I had a comment in a video talking about the Spirit Warrior and how there's this weird ambiguity when it comes to the Fist's weapon. It's just the stats for if you're making an unarmed strike with nothing special attached. And the archetype itself allows you to use two hands, but the whole point of the archetype is to make a strike with a weapon, and then you're essentially like a unarmed fist strike. And so it seems to conflict. Well, there's a part in the book where it says the fist is just an example of an unarmed strike, but the same stats are used for any other part of the body you wish to attack with.
Oh, okay.
But the thing is, it's still called the fist. Someone sent me a comment, and they're like, "Hey, can you point me anywhere to show where the fist can actually be used for other parts of the body that explains this better?" And I went in, I copy pasted the part and the page number, and I put it in. And they're like, "Yeah, but like this doesn't say if the fist gets modified specifically, if that applies to other body parts." And I'm like, the book tells you the fist is the default for any body part, essentially.
Yeah, the fact that it doesn't tell you exactly like the weird edge case question you have, when instead it's asking you to make like the basic assumption, which I think is a very basic assumption it's asking you to make with that question.
Yeah, it's something where it's like, I can literally quote from the book the intent of the design, and people are like, nah, that's not how that works, because it's just not clear enough, because the book called it fist. I wish they had made it unarmed strike rather than fist or something, because it's just not very clear in Paizo's design whether you can kick with your hands full, because that kind of breaks the hand weapon limit, and
yeah, which makes sense. At least I get that from a balance idea.
Well, yeah, but see, the point is,
yeah,
the fist is supposed to be anything you attack with.
Yeah, like I understand that element, but then it immediately hits with the idea of like, wait a second, does that mean they get three weapons? Like, I can see that design question, but then I also can see that design question, but also be like, yeah, but fist is just the name for unarmed strike.
Right. It's really dumb. And the thing is it's not a balancing point, because they wanted that to be the intent. Especially with the design of Spirit Warrior, where you're using a two-handed weapon but are supposed to also be able to strike with the fist.
Yeah, here's the thing that lets you do that, because I just see the worry of like, well, this lets you wield a one-handed weapon, kind of technically. A fist is a one-handed weapon. Whoa. With a two-handed weapon.
Yeah.
But then here's the archetype that lets you do it.
The thing is, the fist weapon sucks. That's the whole point. That's why you can do it, is because the fist weapon is just anything. And when you get powerful fists, it makes it slightly better, but it's still not compared to an actual like stance or something. So balance-wise, it's not really the question. But see, here's the thing, right? Even with what you're saying is the perfect example of why. But Paizo, please, just rename it something or make it clear what you want for the design principle here. Make it obvious.
None of it would be a problem if it was just called unarmed strike.
Exactly.
I don't see why it has to be called fist, because when I hear that, it's like fist. And then my joke thought is like, what, is kicking not invented in Galarian?
Right.
No one think about kicking? And then like that leads to like joke thoughts, and like I'm gonna make a character that invented the idea of the roundhouse kick.
Yeah.
And like that'd be really funny. But then I'm immediately like, yeah, but that's goofy and unserious. I bet that in reality that's just an unarmed strike or a fancy version of a kick, like whatever. That's the assumption I'd make.
Well,
and then
right.
I see that passage, and then I'd be like, oh, okay, that's even more reasonable. Like whatever.
But see, there's also parts where it's like some of the stances mention using kicks specifically, but that doesn't answer, can I kick when my hands are full? Because that's like the idea. So it's really dumb. It's really dumb, and it can be cleared super easily. And I don't know why we went through a whole remaster and they didn't clear it up. When they cleared up other things, like if you have a weapon that has the agile trait and trip trait, your trip with that weapon has agile, which was a point of contention before. So yeah, I don't know. It's really silly. This stuff is really nice. It's very clean and there's no vagueness. Yet, Pathfinder's a pretty tight system overall. And I don't have many problems that are the same as the fist problem. So
the only stuff I can see becoming more vague is when they start getting a little more esoteric. When it starts, because like I'm really curious when it's gonna be mechanical and it's like, all right, mechanical stuff, soul cast. Because in soul casting, how it works is the simple idea of like, okay, I am going to transmute matter from one thing to another. How does that work in the actual thing? That's like the very streamlined understanding of it.
Right.
Well, in reality, you have to convince the object to turn into something else. Because everything has a soul. Therefore, a lot of times these objects have memories of being a different state of being in matter. So you can kind of sway them of being like, hello, rock. Once a long time ago, you were air. But you know what air kind of is? Smoke. Because what is air but smoke? And then the rock is like, that is a good point, human. And then it poofs into smoke. How do you make that a mechanic?
Yeah.
I'm very curious.
Also, thank you, Game Master Vault, for the follow. We appreciate you.
I want to see that.
I mean, that's just that problem exists in other tabletop as well.
It's not even like a problem I foresee. I'm just morbidly curious.
I think when it comes to that situation, it's just going to be boiled down to, if anything, roll a check to convince the rock to turn into smoke.
I think making a charisma check to like a persuasion check or a deception check to do that is such a funny idea. And then like you pop out of the other world, because you have to pop into the realm of thought or at least like put your consciousness there. And then you're like doing it, and then your friends are like, "Hey, what happened?" And you're like, "Well, I couldn't convince the wall to turn into fire." And then they're like, "What? Excuse me?"
Yeah.
I think like, this is a stubborn wall.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right? It's like there's definitely there's a lot of very interesting things. And with these different paths and how you can build your character together. Like, I'm looking at the Scholar stuff now. Man, the Scholar's really cool. I love the Art of Fabrian stuff.
I
super
felt
good.
like you would like the Art of Fabrian stuff. Fabrials are sick as fuck. It's very cool. Like, it's all elements of we put a spren in this funny little device, and they all do different things, and they can like, well, let's make a device that takes away pain if you slap it on you. Oh, we made this thing that literally like lifts a platform in the air so like archers can get better line of fire. and there's a lot of like really vague wiggle room in that aspect, even in like the narrative, because there's just like it's based on what spren you shove in, and
Right.
there's so many different types, and like even artifabrians are like, we don't fully know how this is all gonna work because like we haven't classified everything yet. And so it's a weird form of like science, not magic. It's a science. And so I think you would get a kick out of it a lot.
It does look really interesting. I'm looking at it now. It's really, really cool. I do notice in the Scholar video, in the Heroic Pass where they show the Scholar, there is an error on one of the abilities.
Oh shit.
It's called Know Your Moment. They have an infinity symbol next to it, meaning like it's always active. But the ability states your defense increases by 2 until the start of your next turn, which would indicate it has to be either a free action or an action or something like that. So, yeah, that's a small thing, but I did notice it. And that, to be fair, my job very typically has me looking at text and game stuff and being like, that's wrong. I catch so many errors when I look through Pathfinder books or other games, honestly.
Gotta catch it so you can clear it out.
Yeah. That's an interesting one. Yeah, I'm excited. Looking at this stuff is so hype, honestly. You know what sucks? It's not in the beta.
I would love it if it was in the beta. I want more of it, like so bad. I want to read more of this.
Yeah, exactly. This looks interesting. Give me like five heroic paths. You don't even have to do the paths yet. Just give me 5 heroic paths of just, everyday people, or not like everyday people, but heroic paths.
Yeah, just give me like one tree of like each. Just like, or just show me like a couple. Not even like finished. Just, like, I don't need the art. Just give me a couple. And I just want to know, like, give me the ideas rolling, because I think that's going to get people really invested. Of like, all right, let's get these character ideas, which I would imagine they're probably like going to release those early. Yeah. As like marketing.
I'm sure. And like, I want to know like what am I looking for? Like, how many of these can I reasonably get? I want to know what my builds are gonna kind of look like what I have to work with. How many of these do I get? What's it take to get to these? So that then we can make characters. Because you know what sells tabletop, I think, better than anything? Making characters. Is making characters fun in your game. Because we started getting into Mutants and Masterminds. And Mutants and Masterminds has tables. It has a damage nexus or matrix to tell how much damage you take from a situation. Like, it's a redonkulously busy game with all kinds of nonsense and graphs and tables that really don't have to be there.
Yeah.
And Alex is allergic to that kind of math and stuff typically.
I hate it.
And yet, we got looking at it, he started looking at the powers and what you can do with some of the points, and he's just like, oh. And then he made like, he started conceiving character ideas and thoughts.
The moment I had a tool that made it easier for me, yes, but it's just like the character creation boosted a lot of it.
Yeah.
Because it's that specific part that just immediately skyrocketed my fun and my like super interest in this game was that ability. And I was like, I'm gonna get fucking devious. And also a thing that did immediately was get me more ideas of who the character I want to play is. Yeah. Because as I'm building this stuff, I'm like, okay, that's a fun idea. Would that fit the character? And is that actually what my character would have? Okay, I don't think he'd have it like this. I think he'd want it more like this. And then I work it down like that. And then that builds it more in line with the game. I think it's really good. And they should give me the character info now. I want to see it.
Yeah, and you know what I like even better? It's not just like a list of skill feats or feats you can pick up. When you pick a heroic path, yeah, it's a path of like the Scholar, for instance, but then they have these subpaths like Strategist, Artifabrian, which is essentially a artificer, and Surgeon. So like, one of the things players want is identity. They want to come up with a character idea, and so they see something like Scholar, like, okay, yeah, a Scholar character seems like fun. I want to play like a brainy character, and that's just from the word Scholar. nothing about Scholar by itself indicates that your character is going to be brainy or anything. There's no abilities that comes with just being a Scholar path. It's just that's what it is. And then you look at strategist and you're like, oh, okay, brainy character, but I do like talk about war stuff, or maybe I'm just a really like Sherlock Holmes fighter from like the newer Sherlock Holmes kind of stuff, especially with some of their really cool abilities like mind and body, which gives you a weapon expertise in addition to an erudition.
Yeah, and funny enough, that's like that specific concept, and like went into it, and I really like it in the video where they showed off these paths, because that was an element that they tackled really early on when it's like, how are we going to make these characters designed? And like, because they're like, we can't do a class system, because in Stormlight Archive, and I guess just in the Cosmere in general, the characters aren't defined by one thing, and like people aren't.
Kind of, because some of them become a lot more defined by their paths in Stormlight. But
I mean, they're still not that though. They're really just not one thing. Because like Kaladin, for example, even when he becomes like, I am a Windrunner, he's still like at heart. He's like, I am a surgeon. I am still like a slave. I am a bridgeman. I am a captain. I am a Windrunner. And like Shallan, for example, too. Shallan is a scholar. But like, if I look through the path, Shallan got the first ability of Scholar and then immediately jumped to Envoy. Like, she jumped to a different path. And that's actually funny enough, because she's like, I am a Scholar, I am a con woman, I am a Radiant. Like, that is an element of Shallan, where that's part of her arc, actually. It really, funnily enough, is like, what do I even want to be? Do I want to be a Scholar? And like that design element going into classes of like, you're not one tag. So how can we accentuate this mechanically? Well, okay, let's just give you a method of making a character where you can have multiple identities. You can have like 4 different tags if you really want to, or you have a character that is just one thing. Which I really enjoy, actually. I think it's just a really smart way of doing it.
Yeah, I wish more games did stuff like that. I wish... That's why I like Fabula Ultima, because Fabula Ultima is inherently that way. You have to multi-class.
Exactly. I like how it does. I like that so much, too. Like, it builds a really interesting character. It also makes it so, like, every time you go to make a character, it's going to be really different. And also just everyone at the table, you can have people that are both like, we're going to start both with like the scholar tree. You're going to take it in very different places.
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to be the same thing. And I think that's really fascinating as a design element, just inherently. Any game that has a method of like, we don't have a lot of classes, but you're not going to make similar characters. I love. I think it's super clever.
Yeah. And what I like about these trees as well is they're not purely linear. You can take like predict from strategist, and then you can go to know your moment, which was the second one down on the second half under mind and body, but you can take it because there's a line that connects the two, and then you can take keen insight and then go back to contingency. Even though predict can go to contingency in 2 different ways, the number of abilities and what abilities you have can vary like not wildly, but can be pretty different. So you really get to choose your paths in the paths and mix that with adding additional paths to make some really fascinating characters. And this is something that I think is awesome, and I want to see in more games. Give me games where I get to pick and choose my abilities, what specialties my character's focused on, and let me make an interesting blend of a character by putting these in certain orders. Like, I don't mind if you have to invest in a particular tree or path enough to get to like the really strong abilities. I think that's fine, but I want to do that and also mix in like some other things as well. So it's one of the reasons why I absolutely hate D&D's multi-class system, because like I want to be an archmage wizard, right? But maybe I want to have an idea of like I want to have divine magic in there too. I think that's really interesting. Being a wizard, like Gale from Baldur's Gate, who's a strangely super pious wizard, and giving him divine abilities as given to him essentially like by Mistra is interesting. But by multi-classing it all in D&D, you can never get to the max level stuff of a wizard. It's impossible because you're taking some of your levels and giving them to another class, which prevents you from getting some of the like ultimate stuff. So I like these trees where the biggest stuff you get are not necessarily like super end game level abilities.
Which makes me really curious what the, if there is one, I guess, what the level cap is going to be. Because the only thing I see is that there's just the restriction for stuff for 13 plus. And the D&D-ism makes me think it's like a 20. But that's only because they keep like mentioning D&D, and D&D's 20. And I was looking through the book, and I didn't see like there's a level cap.
Even though this is more Pathfinder than D&D, which is funny, but that's just the angle they have to take.
They have to take it, and I like that there's some streams and videos where it's very clear the D&D isms, like they're not super happy about it.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious to me, but they know that, you know, you have to. But like I'm curious what the level cap is, because how far can you take it?
Yeah, how many of these abilities can I get? That's what I want to know. Like, what's a reasonable number of abilities for, say, like a character who's like mid-level?
Yeah. I get that having like 13 is probably like, is 13 mid-level or is 10 like literally middle of it? Like,
well, technically,
10,
in most
20.
games, it's always a range. Like mid-level in Pathfinder, because I know that better, is technically actually anything like 7 to 10 is in that range, because most games don't go to end game, you know. Mm-hmm. So when you consider a character's end game in Pathfinder typically is like level 16, 17 is about how high your characters will get in a standard adventure.
Yeah.
So mid-level is more close to like the 7, 8, 9, 10 range. D&D, I don't know, because everyone says the game breaks down after level 10. So
and then people all started at 3, so levels 1 and 2 don't exist.
Yeah, so it's like, is mid-game level 5?
I think it is.
Like, I don't know. I don't play enough D&D to know. And to be fair, for most of the people I know who play D&D, don't play normal D&D. So it like the levels mean even less in that regard. So yeah, I don't know, but yeah, mid-level is typically like 7 and 10 in that range.
Yeah.
So
all I know is that gaining experience, I think, is through a different avenue than like you kill thing, you get XP. Because it is specifically, I think it's done through achieving goals.
right.
It's going to be a goal-based system of you have to establish what your goals and character motivations are, and then as you work towards those every session, you get to mark stuff down, and then that's what allows you to get more levels, which I like games that do that. I really enjoy that system. I think it's a great method of making it so like players are motivated to seek out things on their own by giving a direct motivation for, I guess, player-led story.
Yeah. So I definitely think we're in for what could be one of the most influential TTRPGs to come out since, I guess, Pathfinder, now that I think about it. Because Pathfinder's 3-action system kind of just revolutionized D&D's action system, which has been there's been so many action systems that have always kind of just missed the mark barely, that the 3-action system, despite its simplicity, really fixed for a lot of things. Because like a Pathfinder 1st edition had like standard actions, but also full actions, you know. And D&D has always kind of played with like action, reaction kind of stuff. Then with 5th edition, we got bonus action, which was off of actually 4E's bonus action stuff, and or like per whatever. So the 3 action system's really good, and seeing it here in Cosmere makes me happy. I love the combat being able to have fast and slow rounds. I think that's super cool too. And honestly, like, it's so funny that the Critical Role game, Daggerheart, got so much flack for its kind of weird initiative system. And this system is just like, players go first, enemies go second. End of discussion. No more talk. And I haven't seen anyone bitch about that yet.
Well, it's not Critical Role, so you know.
Yeah, exactly. We you know, you hit the nail on the head there, buddy. I think we know what people are actually angry about.
Yeah, it's. We'll see when the game actually drops. I think that when it's like there's more stuff, we'll see people. Because I know there's some people who are like that were critiquing it, or even trying to critique it, but not finding a lot. More just being like, I've never been a fan of Brandon Sanderson or like Stormlight Archive, and it's very funny seeing a game that's just stealing stuff from D&D and Pathfinder being this popular. And it's like, yeah, dude, cool, man. All right.
Yeah, it's just like
I'm personally very down for just taking elements that work from other games and like working them into your system. I think it works very well, and
yeah,
I like that design idea.
You should do that. I think not learning from other game design is a bad idea, and shows a level of ignorance.
Not everything needs to be like fully unique, and if there's a thing that just works, use it and iterate on it even very minorly if you have to. But like, if there's just a system that's like, well, this just is perfect, you use it.
Yeah,
same with a lot of game stuff. If it's not patented, fucking yoink it.
It's something where I'm left hopeful. Like I said before, I think this has a lot of really good parts, and even and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the Cosmere RPG is going to be bigger than D&D.
No.
World of Warcraft has been a game on decline for, well, I've heard recently that actually World of Warcraft has been doing pretty well with its recent expansions.
The new expansion, I've been seeing a lot of hubbub, like good hubbub.
Yeah. The last few have been actually pretty good, honestly. But like, it was on decline for a really long time, and it still reigned supreme. And even now, over a decade later, with a game that's so outdated, it still reigns supreme. D&D, just like, we went to Barnes & Noble. I went and I bought Suzanne some books for her birthday, which is coming up here really soon. And we went to Barnes & Noble to get some books. And the games section has like 2 big shelving areas dedicated purely to D&D, and then everything else, one shelf, all scrunched together.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? You go to actual game bookstores or whatever, they also have pretty typically large D&D sections, but they'll have like decent sized sections for other kinds of games, you know. But like standard stores or anywhere you would expect to find TTRPG books, they're gonna have these massive D&D sections, and they're always gonna have them because people buy them, and because like Hasbro pays for the shelf space. Like, that's why it happens, and that's why smaller retailers don't do that, because why is D&D gonna go and buy shelf space at some small retailer, right? They're gonna do it for like Target, Fred Meyer, or
and then
wherever.
They're simply just gonna stock it because it jumped off the shelf constantly.
Yeah. So it's not gonna be that. And honestly, I don't know if they can beat Paizo, because Paizo's insane, and they put out so much content, and they've been working really hard, and they're great people too, and they make a really good game. So I don't think they're gonna beat out Starfinder, Pathfinder, D&D, breaking into the niches that is the Call of Cthulhu or European TTRPGs also can be insanely hard to do. But I feel like this is going to be like, because Star Wars Edge of the Empire is actually a very like well played game as far as niche games are concerned. Like,
that game does genuinely rule, and I'd play it a lot more and talk about it a lot more if I liked Star Wars as a setting.
yeah.
And it hurts me that I'm locked away from a game system that is a utter delight to interact with because I think that the setting is boring. And it hurts me.
But hey, Cosmere coming up.
Exactly. And
all you
this
love
is
in a better setting.
Exactly. And this hurts. Not even hurts actually, but this is just like, this hits because like I'm hit with this and I'm just like, man, I want to, I'm probably going to buy a lot of the books when they drop just because I'm going to make videos on stuff. But like, and then also as a fan, because I want it. I want to own it and collect it. There's a I don't know, I'm just going to buy the Stonebreakers campaign book because like this is the one game I'm like, man, what if I try to run it and just try to do something with it? And I think it'd be really fun because I think we have a group that we could put together and it'd be we'd have a great time in the Cosmere.
Yeah.
And I'm already absorbing literally everything. And by the time it all comes out, who knows? Maybe I'm done with both. Maybe I've finished Mistborn, and then I'm like, I've become an expert on just the Cosmere itself. And like I can then just pull out literally anything. And then when World Hoppers drops out, I'm like, hey y'all, we can world hop now.
Yeah.
I know all of it.
I mean, you know, I also plan on getting into it. Right now, my free time is dedicated to beating the crap out of Shin Megami Tensei 5.
That's so fair.
I'm very close to the end of my first run.
Oh shit.
My second run's gonna be much shorter because right now I'm fusing all the monsters, I'm fusing all the demons, and I'm doing all the side quests. But I do want to see the other story, and I've seen it's super actually different, and you go to a different zone twice, actually 2 different zones in the
and you also get a new appearance, new abilities. Like it's significantly different.
Yeah. So the second run, I'm just not going to be so focused on fusing and getting every demon in my compendium. I'm just going to go with some different build and go through. I also really like the combat system, but I've been forcing myself to finish a game. I haven't finished a game in quite a while, actually. My attention span always runs out, but I'm forcing myself to finish this one. Then I got Black Myth Wukong. I'm going to play that because that game looks super interesting. Like the narrative and the gameplay looks kind of okay in the end.
Yeah, it looked very like there's an action game that I remember. It was like kind of Devil May Cry where you play as like some psychics.
Yeah,
that I remember. It reminded me a lot of that, where I'm like, this doesn't seem like it'd be like mechanically fully my thing, but visually, if I'm watching someone play it, I think I'd be pretty interested. But like Sun Wukong, also my boy.
Also, it looks really interesting. The myths and the mythos of like Central Asia or Eastern and Southern Asia kind of mixing together. There are apparently demons unique to each story.
Yeah.
And
yeah, there's new demons added with the SMT Vengeance.
Ah, I see. Black Myth is Souls-like. It's not Souls-like. It's an action game.
No, it is the one bit where I was trying to determine is basically what kind of action game it was. If it was a bit more like Devil May Cry-like, or I keep wanting to say Stellar Blade, but it's not that fucking anime game with the psychic characters.
Oh,
it's just...
yeah, I know. Yeah, I don't remember which one it was.
Because it was like it's a cool hack and slash, but it's just not mechanically like not. It just wasn't engaging for me.
It reminded me of Code Vein, which I also really liked. But
Code Vein is like a simplistic kind of Souls-like, but it was like if Code Vein was more of a hack and slash.
Yeah.
Which is like fair enough if you want that. It was just like I couldn't do like any combos. All the combo strings very basic.
Honestly, I wouldn't mind if this game was more of like a Souls-like, but it's just to get the high action you get in the game, you can't have a Souls-like. You can't have high action like stuff in a Souls-like game, because the whole point of Souls-like games are they're very methodical, how you approach combat and what you do.
And if I'm gonna take after the Monkey King, I better be fucking air juggling and like doing sick combos. I better get an SSS like rank on some fool if I'm gonna be like Sun Wukong.
So it's just an action adventure game, which is fine. I think it's fine. Sure, it has the Souls-like element of if you die, the enemies respawn, but that's it. So not really Souls-like. But anyway, hopping back to Cosmere. So Cosmere RPG, it's gonna be great. I'm going to listen to the audiobooks eventually when I get the time to do so, and I think this will be a very big game. I do think it has the potential to be a very big game. Whether it is or not, it depends on the will of the people in the end. Do people latch on to this? Does it get a huge following? Do internet celebrities talk about it or not? Because legitimately, Warhammer was super niche. Not super niche. Warhammer was niche. Granted, a pretty big niche. There's a lot of people who really, really like Warhammer, but I wouldn't call it like the kind of thing that everyone gets into, right? I wouldn't.
Warhammer's at least a thing you're aware of. If you're like Warhammer, it's like, oh, okay, I've heard of that. But like that's a lot of times that's kind of the end state. It's that kind of niche.
Yeah, it's a tabletop war game, and it has very fascinating lore and books written on it. But like that wasn't, most people didn't really care. And then VTubers started getting into Warhammer, and then your favorite like internet celebrity or real celebrities in the case of like the Superman guy, I forgot his name.
Henry Cavill.
Sorry.
Henry Cavill.
Henry Cavill got into it.
Henry Cavill was also begging to play Kaladin if there was going to be he called Brandon Sanderson. He was begging, and then Brandon was like, I'm sorry, man, Kaladin is like 19 years old and Asian. So like you're neither of those things.
Yeah.
And he's like, I know, I just wanted to play him.
So, if it wasn't for all these people suddenly like getting interested in Warhammer, Warhammer would not be nearly as in vogue as it has been. So the Cosmere RPG can do a lot of the same things. I think a lot of people have been interested in it. The problem is I feel like they came out with all this stuff for their Kickstarter, and then they released a very mid beta, and that was gonna hurt it. And I honestly wish they didn't come out with the beta at all yet, until they had more stuff to put into it. And I feel like also,
or at least not presented it as like, hey, do you want to play it? Because like right now there's just nothing to play. As a rules preview, I appreciate it. As a product that I could maybe sit down and demo and like play the game, I'm not interested. Like I like it to read the mechanics of what I can expect, of like what I like reading some of the systems. It's the demo and like that aspect where I'm less interested, which I think is just like they should have communicated it a little differently. Oh yeah, you have to use a demi-plane to like create the character. So like if you want to see like the paths and stuff that they have actually put out, you have to use a demi-plane.
Yeah.
And like so they're not even like in the book and stuff.
Yeah. So, it's, I think that was a misplay. Also, like, I'm kind of tired of tabletop RPG games coming out with like a bunch of push goals that are like, now we have minis and cards and all this kind of stuff. Like, not that I hate minis. I think they're fine. I think they're cool. But the problem with minis are you get minis for a game you already really, really like and want to get minis for. I don't want the money going into the project to go towards the production of minis or gilding the pages on the books or making action cards. Put all the money into developing interesting things or new books or more rules or something, you know, something to make the actual game better and not just make the game prettier. That's my gripe. Some people will disagree with that. Some people are like, whatever, I don't care. It's I think the minis are cool or anything. Plus, what are they going to do with the money anyway? And that's
I do like how some of the minis, because there's like the minis and then there's the painted minis that you definitely saw in like the add-ons part.
right.
The painted minis is a product you can already buy.
Yeah.
Or at least like is in like pre-production or something already. Like, so that is just like an extra cheaper made, like that's going to be a little bonus you can get on top of it. Because like all of those are products you can go get. Or at least they were like, it was that or they're like limited time character models for like the characters in the books. So like at least it's not going to those, but I also feel similar. I'm like, I want the game to be great. I don't care about the accessories. I'm not here for the accessories, which is why I'm in the camp of I am waiting for ebooks. Because I care about just the actual PDF. I want the file. I don't want like the demi-plane or the Foundry add-on or like it only on Roll20. I want the raw file.
Yeah. And
that is what I want to buy.
You know, and that's why whatever I put in is usually just for like the core stuff. Like I put in for books and PDFs technically. But still, I don't want the money going towards like other stuff. You know, I want the money to just make the game better. You know, put more art in it, make the books better organized, hire more people to get the books out sooner. That's what I want. That's where I want the money to go. Not, yeah, we're gonna order a bunch of minis, or we're gonna get a bunch of books that have gilded page edges. You know, like the slip covers. Okay, I'll take some slip covers. Sure. You know, there are some things I think are nice, but and to be fair, whenever you start a Kickstarter project, you don't put the frivolous stuff early. Those are always stretch goals for when you go above what you're expecting. But still, I just wish those weren't a part of the deal. I just wish it was just like, make me another book, make book faster.
And I imagine it was I think the stretch goal stuff that happened behind the scenes of like they were meant to be like fun stretch goals that then like behind the scenes were then made like, oh, wait a second, okay, so this got all funded behind the scenes like for all this, and then now our funding is actually going towards like extra crazy stuff.
Yeah,
and which is very cool. Because, like, I know part of the whole aspect of it being the Cosmere thing, I'm pretty sure it was meant to be the Cosmere, like, the whole time, and that was, like, the reveal. But then the fact that we're getting Mistborn stuff already worked on, I think is because of all the money that's being shoved in.
Yeah, which I'm fine with. That's what I want the money to go to.
Yeah, that's exactly what is like, oh, hell yeah. And I hope it stays like that, because, yeah, I don't care. I do not give a shit about the accessories. I care about content and like actual core content. I'm not going to use the accessories because if we're going to play it, it's going to be digital. So I'm never going to use it, and I don't care.
Yeah, and hell yeah, Dev Phoenix, exactly. Pay your employees more.
Yes.
Like, everyone should profit more when a thing does better.
You made that much money. You use it to make your game better and your employees happier. Give them a nice bonus.
So, you know, that's... And the thing is, right, is like that should be something, because they probably will do that anyway, but some people will be upset by that because they're like, I didn't pay for your employees to make more money. I'm not paying to make you guys rich. I'm paying for the cool things. And
well, them being taken care of means the stuff that you're going to get is going to be better quality and at a better rate.
Yeah. But the thing is that's not one of the things mentioned in there, that they'll pay the people more. Maybe that's just one of the things that has to stay secret, you know, because otherwise people just get weird about it. I'm not sure. But yeah, I think the Cosmere is going to be good. We kind of gone over for time today. I'm just excited. When I looked at the heroic paths, that instantly made me way more excited for the game than I was, before. I think the beta is bad, but maybe the beta will be made better soon, and then we can get something that we can actually like Daggerheart's beta. I think was the perfect size for the beta.
That was a good beta release.
Here's a bunch of things we're messing with. Tell us what you think about the system and everything. And actually, I think they are working on the initiative system because everyone was complaining about it. So,
that's so funny if like they make a a normal like a D&D initiative system, and then the Cosmere RPG comes out with not standard, weird, and then the same people are like, beautiful. Yeah. Look at this initiative system, non-standard, amazing.
Finally, something different
innovative
than what D&D has always been doing.
Innovative. We can decide when we go. Why hasn't anybody done this before?
The critical overall hate is ridiculous.
It's goofy.
I don't understand it, but that's gonna be it for us today. Alex, anything you want to leave us off with before we head out for the day?
Yeah, if any of this long talk has interested you in learning about what the actual world of Roshar is kind of like, some of the names we've kind of thrown around, like Shardblade, Shardplate, all that kind of pizzazz.
What a art of Fabrian is.
Yeah, what is a Fabrial? What is a Soulcaster? All these terms. Well, they're very well detailed, and in a good few days, at least at some point soon, I am going to be releasing a video, part 1 of a intro to the world of Roshar. And it's going to break down basically all that entry-level world knowledge, the stuff that is no spoilers, but all the stuff you basically would get early on in the first book, just kind of broken down into what do the terms mean. And then later on, I'll do videos on like, all right, here's what the Knights Radiant and like the power system, how it actually works, and maybe a bit more of the advanced concepts that kind of teeter a bit more spoilery, but they're super interesting, and I think they can get you in if you don't care about how it's introduced really slowly in the book series. And yes, everything is crabs, by the way. If you want to really hit the a setting where everything has evolved into crabs, read Stormlight.
Yeah.
It's super cool. But yeah, I'm gonna have that out in a good few days, so go subscribe to my channel. It's Glue Boy. It's linked in Cam's YouTube, or just look up Glue Boy. You'll find it. And I also got other content: 40k, Vampire the Masquerade, Lancer, other stuff.
Hell yeah. Yeah, go check out his stuff. It's really good, and he knows a lot more about Stormlight stuff than I do.
I've been reading it for months.
Yeah, I need to catch up for sure. Things are going back to normal for now until the next book releases in October. So halfway through October, I go through this whole thing again. But I'm going to be releasing more content based on the recent books that have come out. I got some time to catch up. I got to do some more videos on the Lancer stuff that's come out as well, which has been really hype. Plus, continue talking about Fabula Ultima as well. So if you want to be up to date on all things TTRPG, I recommend subscribing, following, or at least joining our Discord down in the description below, so you know whenever a video goes up or whenever we're talking about things there. And as well, the channel's been doing really, really well. So we're probably going to start seeing more people showing up in the streams, more people showing up in the videos and the comments and everything like that. I'm doing my best to moderate as much as I can, but for anyone who's scared of the channel growing, just know that the heart of the channel is always just going to be talking about tabletop stuff. I'm not going to dedicate a bunch of videos to a game I'm not interested in or I don't think is interesting to talk about. And yeah, other than that, we're just going to be kind of more business as usual as I go through my health journey. You can stay tuned for the health journey as I try to lose weight, get back to the gym, and yeah, also probably get invested in, I've been losing days to video games a lot more lately, which has been great, especially because they're mostly games that are not brand new, but games I've been meaning to play for a while. So yeah, all kinds of fun stuff going on in the channel.
It's gonna be me when when Space Marine 2 comes out.
Yeah, well,
I am so set.
yeah, I can't wait to finish Shin Megami Tensei 5. I think it's really
It's a good game.
And then to do Vengeance. So, but yeah, that's gonna be it for us. Thank you all so much for watching, and I guess I'll say goodnight.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.